Over the course of its existence, the UN has conducted more than 70 peacekeeping missions around the world. More than 1 million people from 125 countries have participated in them. The organization does not have its own army, but member states voluntarily contribute their own troops to peacekeeping missions. The purpose of the Blue Helmets is to act as a neutral third party to help bring a ceasefire and create a buffer zone between opposing parties and promote reconciliation.
Most of them are partially successful, but very often they fail. Among such recent operations that can be considered successful is the UN operation on the territory of former Yugoslavia, Eastern Slavonia, Barania, Isram. And in the small region, the UN operation task was successful. I mean that within a few years there were a few cases when peace was established and then the conditions for transition to a stable long-term peace were secured, with elections, with resettlement of refugees. But these are rather exceptions to the rule.
Peacekeepers cannot always stop wars, as they are usually deployed in the conflict zone after the active phase has ended, but they must prevent the resumption of hostilities. There are currently 20 UN peacekeeping missions, including operations in India, Pakistan and Cyprus. Russia also participated in peacekeeping missions, but experts believe that Moscow used them as an instrument of influence, and rather than ending conflicts, Moscow is interested in freezing them.
The deployment of Russian peacekeepers always resulted in the conflict not being resolved, so they ensured the preservation of unrecognized states and tensions along their borders. For example, Moldova and Georgia could not longer solve the problem of their territorial integrity on their own without Russia, from the publication of Medusa.
Kazakhstan could also find it in a similar situation. In February 2022, people went on mass protests in different cities of the country. As a result, at first, they opposed the increased gas prices, and then they put forward political demands. That's when the Russian Federation deployed the so-called collective peacekeeping forces with the participation of the CSTO countries. Russian soldiers wearing UN peacekeeping helmets were spotted on the streets of Almaty. Soon, a representative of the United Nations organization told Radio Azatik that the armed men were not the part of the peacekeeping mission.
In essence, it was a punitive police operation against the opposition, against the anti-government forces, but the other side had the consent of the legally elected government. So the question is how legitimate were the decisions of the president of Kazakhstan.
The Kremlin uses the so-called peacekeepers for its own purposes, and it does not consider it necessary to ensure their security. In Karabakh, a vehicle carrying Russian military personnel came under fire. As a result, all of them died. Azerbaijan's defense ministry expressed deepest condolences, and President Aliyev promised to help the families of the victims. Meanwhile, there was no reaction from Moscow itself. The so-called Russian peacekeepers have been in Karabakh since 2020 under the condition of trilateral agreement between Azerbaijan, Armenia and Russia. Reported by Anastasia Tarnavska, Nikita Skoblikov, UATV News.